What's up?
How you doing, brother?
Where's my hold on, where the fuck's this camera? Can you see me?
Yeah, I got you. Can you see me?
Yeah, bro. Good, yeah.
How you doing?
Good, man. Good, good, good.
Thanks for jumping on a call.
Of course, man. Thank you.
Can
Thank you
you,
for
how's my sound coming through?
it's good. It's a little uh I think quality is like 80% of the way there, but
Okay.
it's good enough.
Okay, good. Um, yeah, man. So, thanks for doing this. And before you're hosting a barbecue, something like that today?
Yeah, so I've got every month or maybe two or whatever, whenever I get a chance really, I try and get all the Bitcoiners from around Brisbane and the area and whatever to get together and we talk Bitcoin, we cook up some meat, we hang out for the day and yeah man. So and because I'm going to Latvia next week and I'll be Latvia, London, I'm gonna head into the US for a little bit. And we haven't caught up for a while. I just thought I'd put something on, catch up with everyone.
And so, what's the hot topic around the Bitcoin barbecue these days? What do you guys geek
Shit,
out on?
dude, we haven't caught up in months, man. The last time we caught up, I wonder what the fuck was going on. Um, and I feel like we caught up early this year, and um, it was kind of like just. Oh, actually, that's right. We caught up the day before, or a couple days before that, the April Fool's pump. So we've got this funny meme, right? So every time we catch up and we talk about Bitcoin, all this sort of shit, um, a day or two later, or that night or whatever, Bitcoin starts fucking pumping.
I'm sure it's
It
because of the
always,
barbecue.
dude, that's exactly what it is. We've figured out. So every time we feel like a pump, we're like, all right, guys, it's time to get dinner or some shit. But yeah. So I mean, I think,
Well, what's maybe a better question is what kind of excitement are you going to bring to the barbecue? Like, what's getting Alex going these days in the Bitcoin industry?
dude, I mean, I don't know if you know much about what I'm working on, but
Yeah, we'll get into
Amber.
it.
Yeah, so Amber's the product that I'm working on. I'm just trying to get more people, just fucking holding it and buying some Bitcoin. Other than that, I mean, you know, the Twitterverse is interesting. Like the thing that got me triggered most recently was that silly chick who put up that tweet saying, "Oh, nobody saw the altcoin thing coming, blah blah blah," and I was like, "What are you, a fucking idiot?" Like it's like to me that's the height of arrogance is someone being ignorant and dismissive of all of the warnings and everything that everyone was saying, and then when they lose everything to turn around and say, oh, you're just fucking toxic. It's like, don't be so fucking arrogant. Just number one, if you want to be respected and fucking considered, admit that you're wrong. Like, have some humility.
Well,
Like, say that you were stupid and that you were ignorant and that you were doing dumb shit, gambling on fucking shit coins that you didn't understand,
yeah.
and then people will fucking welcome you. But don't be a fucking arrogant shit who just turns around and just calls people, toxic misogynist because they told you not to fucking do that and you went and did it anyway.
Well, that's the humble part about Bitcoin. Stay humble, stack sats, which has become the predominant meme these days and very relevant to your business, I'm sure. But that people, I feel like people will interpret that first part many different ways depending on where they are. Stack sats is obvious, right? But stay humble, like we could, we're all probably lacking a little bit of humility in certain areas, and then maybe over humble in other areas. But that's a prime example of missing that point entirely. You're
Mm-hmm.
not only are you still not like you missed the lesson in the mistake that you made, and
Yep.
now you're doubling down on the mistake by saying that it wasn't your fault. You couldn't have seen it coming. Nobody was saying nobody warned you. But this is the kind of shit that permeates the industry. So
That's it, dude. It inspired me because I'm gonna start my own channel soon. And the first episode I recorded it last week, so I'll probably push it live this week, and I'll make it. It's gonna be a YouTube channel, but I'll just post everything as audio on like a podcast or some shit.
yeah.
It's gonna be called Wake Up, but this whole thing inspired me to talk about how uh, what's quote unquote considered toxicity is actually Bitcoin's immune system, and it's Bitcoin's it's the Bitcoin network and the community's immunity to stupidity, charlatanism, high time preferences, and like fucking all of the crap that's going on. And the greater the stupidity, guess what? The more toxic the response is going to be. Like any functional system has immune responses, and immune responses. I mean, when you're sick and you've got the flu, guess what your white blood cells are? They're fucking toxic to the flu.
Hmm.
So that is a natural function of a system, and it's a self-protecting mechanism, and that's what I mean. I love how Bitcoin, how analogous it is to a living organism,
Yeah.
because we are the participants that make up, that protective, you know, that fucking we're the lymphatic drainage system of Bitcoin, and we blast fucking people, and we sound arrogant, we sound like assholes, but we come from a place of truth, we come from a place of honor, we come from a place of saying what's fucking right, because we've got the balls to stand our ground,
Right.
uh, instead of just buying into the next fucking Ponzi or the next stupid, veneer ideology that someone wants to sell somebody. So,
And this is another thing that kind of reveals the ego and the lack of humility, is that ultimately, even though it may not at first seem this way, that response is compassionate, right? Like, and
yes,
and even though, I mean, many of us and many people that respond that way, they probably enjoy a little bit, like needling people and slapping people across the face a little bit and saying "I told you so" and don't be
yep,
so fucking stupid. But ultimately, a lot of it does come out of a place of compassion, saying, "Look, I want this thing to be successful. I want Bitcoin to be successful. I want the impact that it could have on humanity to be realized. I need you to stop being such an idiot if that's going to be the case. So I actually do want the best for you. Like, I don't want you to be
yeah,
wrecked. I want you to put your money in the best possible chance we have for this thing. And you're
yep,
being a fucking idiot right now." And so,
exactly,
and
yeah.
that's the tough love, which, so many people today are just not used to receiving and have a negative response to.
Dude, it's so true. Like when I say it to people, and people are like, "Oh, why are you so aggressive?" And I say it's because I actually care. If
Yeah.
I didn't care, I would not say fucking anything. I would let you go and do your stupid shit. But I actually fundamentally give a fuck. And call me an asshole, call me arrogant, call me whatever you want to call me, but I actually care. And it's particularly like, my girlfriend gets annoyed at me sometimes because I'm very sharp and pointed with particularly people who are close to me.
Hmm.
And when they do dumb things, like I will pull them up on it. I just do. And like, my mum said something really dumb when she came and visited me a couple weeks ago. And like, I must admit, it triggered me. And I just sort of like put her in a place, and my girlfriend's like, "You're such an asshole. How could you speak like that to your mum?" And I was like, I said it because I actually care. It's, and I don't want her to buy into stupidity,
Can
just
you
because she
say
saw
what she said, or do you not want to
Oh,
out
it
her like
was
that?
no, no, no. It was something about Trump, man. It was she was watching some fucking stupid documentary, obviously written by leftists who are, pumping dumb propaganda about Trump, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like she said something really," and I can't even remember what it was, but it just irked me the wrong way. I'm like, "Man, do you seriously sit there and believe the fucking shit you watch on TV just because some moron reporter decided to like say something? The guy can't even fucking wipe his ass or run a lemonade stand, and he's going to sit there and comment, give his opinion
Yeah.
on how politics and how things should be run, and why Hillary Clinton was a much better fucking, potential leader for America. Like, fucking, what are you thinking? So I
Mate,
just,
it's so funny you say that. I mean, and I'm sure you're the same as me. Like, I love the shit out of my mom, right? Nothing but love, biggest heart in the world. But
Mhm.
we've butted heads my entire life on this issue, right? Like, I would come downstairs or upstairs or come home from living away, and she'd have on the 8 p.m. nightly local news, and then after that the national news, and then after that the entertainment news. And I come into the room and I'm just like, do you serious? Is this what's informing your perspective and
Yeah,
view on the world? And
yeah,
and
yeah.
and by the way, this is just one person's very broad narrative. If you really want to know about the world, and I remember when, like, few years ago, I was like, look, I'm going to set you up with a Twitter account, and you can follow Martha Stewart, and you can follow fucking Jamie Oliver and Roger Federer, and like the news sources, like the national news site and all that stuff. We'll just curate your own news. So when you want to know about stuff, you just give it a few flicks, and your very own curate.
Oh, because I can see you clearly.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can see me clearly. Anyway, let's
keep
roll
rolling.
again. That was weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So all I was saying was, I know the feeling, and it's that thing that you bump up against all the time with, it seems like there's two general groups of people, right? And it has to do with age, generation, disposition, level of curiosity, all that kind of shit. But you've got people that are just totally unquestioning about the status quo. What happens on the news is what's happening in the world. That's it. And then you've got people that don't accept anything as, de facto truth. You have to find it for yourself. And, I said the other day on a podcast that Bitcoin is a wealth transfer to the curious, because it's all these people that just looked out at the world and said, this doesn't add up. The way the currency and the monetary policy and the banking system works, and many, many other things about politics and governance and all this kind of stuff, like, this seems pretty shit. Like, this doesn't make any sense at all. And as a result, they go down the necessary rabbit holes, and they muddle through, make mistakes, find their way. And so that's one group of people, and the other group is the ones that just don't question. And that's why, or that's probably one of the reasons why Bitcoin's adoption has, on a macro, it's been insanely fast. We'll look back at this and say 10 years is a flash in the pan historically, but as we're in it, we're like, how come more people aren't into this thing? And it's because of that difference in disposition. One is accepting of the way things are, the other is not.
Man, there's a saying, right? The teacher will come when the student is ready, and I think that's literally Bitcoin is the greatest teacher.
Yeah.
And it'll come into everyone's life when they're ready. Like I to my everlasting regret was not ready when I first heard about it. I was too busy with other shit the first time around. I was, too caught up in gold and silver and all of that sort of shit. And I saw this internet funny money, and I was like, yeah, whatever. The second time I heard about it, I, saw Roger Ver crying on a fucking documentary. I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? And anyway, I was like, too busy with building tech companies, doing whatever else I was doing. And it was the third time around, man, when I heard it, and I was ready. I was primed. And I was looking for something. And the further I went down the proverbial rabbit hole, the more I realized that this is the most profound thing happening, not only in today's generation, but in probably any generation throughout the history of mankind. Like this is, and I know I sound like a raving lunatic saying that shit, but it really is, right?
You're preaching to the converted, man. It's okay. Yeah. But yeah, and I feel that way a lot too, and especially on the pod thus far. We really get into like the uber optimistic views on Bitcoin and stuff, but it's difficult not to. Like I heard you say recently that you found what you're going to be doing with your life, basically, and that's not only is that an amazingly, I'm sure, awesome feeling to know that all that kind of potential and energy and ambition that you have inside, now you have a worthy canvas on which to push all that stuff, and that's I think that's how a lot of us feel, and we're all kind of finding our way through in that regard, and that's fucking awesome. The energy and the innovation and the happiness that's going to unleash is incredible, but it is one of those things that it's weird how it initially hooks people, and I going back to the humble thing that we were talking before, like I think you can dismiss it. I dismissed it originally because I thought I got it. I came across it early, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I didn't get the tech enough to appreciate the level of innovation, and then I thought I understood it enough to dismiss it. And I've heard you say that you were a gold bug, and back in 06, 07, you were listening to guys like Schiff and Rogers and Salente and these people. Dude, exactly the same history as me. And I thought everything was fucked, and it was gold and silver all the way. I had a gold money account since like 2005 or something like that. Like, I was there, and I didn't think, I guess I thought gold and silver were a safer hedge than Bitcoin. And
hell yeah. Yeah.
that's a reasonable way to think when you've got something with a tiny market cap that just emerged as magic internet money. Like I often think like I don't want to take anything away from the early adopters because some were like they had a lot of really good foresight, but a lot of them stumbled in ass backwards and ended
Dude,
up working out.
we know who the prime example of that is,
Right.
right? The world's luckiest fire fucking cracker salesman. So you're right. That's the thing. Like I think some of us were just too arrogant, and I'll put my hand up, in the beginning and just say it. Like I was too arrogant when I first heard about it to look any deeper.
Yeah.
I thought I knew what the fuck I was doing, and I was, and do you know what? It's just it's so oh, it's like poetic justice, right? It's, you know, if you're arrogant in this space, like you will get taught a fucking lesson. If you're arrogant enough to think you know where the tops are or the bottoms are, you're gonna get taught a lesson. If you're arrogant to think you know it all already, you're gonna get taught a lesson. If you're arrogant to think that it's, reached its zenith, you're gonna get taught a lesson in any way, shape. If you're arrogant enough to think that you're gonna fix Bitcoin, you get taught a lesson. If you're arrogant enough to think some other shitcoin's gonna be better, you're gonna get taught a lesson. It's such a, and you know what? I deserve every little bit of, the consequence of my arrogance from the early days.
Yeah.
I 100% deserve it, and I accept that because, I was too stupid to think about it earlier. But here I am now, and I will not fucking make that mistake again.
Yeah. I mean, I think it could be a truth or like a kind of a universal that truth humbles, and I
Yes.
see Bitcoin as this, and maybe it's hyperbole, maybe it's a little over the top, but like I see it as this truthful, pure sort of entity has a lot of that's moving in a lot of different ways. But whether you encounter a truth in that capacity or like a philosophical truth or whatever, truth humbles you because the reflection that you like, it reflects back onto you. And if there's any kind of crap or bullshit or artificiality or whatever that you're confronting it with, it's going to reveal that. And so I think
Hmm.
that's why a lot of people get humbled by Bitcoin and why a lot of people are kept out of Bitcoin longer than they should because their ego is keeping them from seeing it.
Big time. And I don't know if it's yeah, it's ego in one sense, but it's just, yeah. I don't like to demonize the concept of ego too much,
No, no,
because
no.
it's been demonized by, all the the leftist ideologue type movements, which, state that you're not important, your ego's not important, you're nothing, it's all about the collective. So I think, but in
An
saying that,
excess.
yeah, it's the essence of what you mean by ego there, in terms of, being the I am, you know how can I say, I know, when you don't. It's that humility versus the arrogance, I think, that is, which one could argue is associated with ego, that I think is the downfall. And man, Matt Odell and his just the stay humble element is just fucking spot on.
Yeah.
Like it's the most one of the most profound things ever. One of the most profound memes that's ever been quoted, man.
It'll go down in history, man. And it's so funny to think about that, right?
So
Because Matt's just a quote unquote, according to him, normal dude who's really into this stuff, and it just popped into his mind for whatever inspired it in him, and he said it, and just by virtue of the fact that the subject matter we're dealing with and the times that we're in, that will be immortalized in like in history. It's ridiculous.
There'll be textbooks in the future
It
saying,
fucking actually will be.
ch- chapter 8, stay humble, stack sats.
Right? I mean, that's not even a stretch. I mean,
Oh,
I
dude.
bet on that, So it's, and to your point about like now, once you saw it, now you're in. I mean, I think it, once you do see it, you have very little. It grinds on you until you decide, like, all right, I got to commit to this thing because you begin to realize the gravity of this moment in time, or like how special it is. I mean, and again, this whole conversation is presupposing that we're right. So we'll just get that out of the way entirely now. So if people are listening, being like, these fucking dickheads think they're right about this and they're wrong, yes, you might be fucking right about that. But let's suppose, for the sake of this argument, that we're actually going to be proven right. Then
Yep.
we're at a time right now, like you'll look back and punch yourself in the dick for not being involved in this at this moment in time.
Yeah. There's I can't remember who said it first. It's like the risk of not being involved now is far greater than the risk of being involved.
Right.
Just before I jumped on this podcast, I've been spending a little bit of time trying to jump on, podcasts that are at the periphery, that aren't sort of Bitcoin podcasts, that are sort of more about entrepreneurship or more about startups or more about, I was just on one earlier called uh, Money and Millennials, I think it is. And it's just like a podcast about, what millennials should invest in. It's got nothing to do with Bitcoin or all that sort of stuff, but, I want to start red pilling people from, from outside the community. And oh shit, what was I saying there? What was the point you just made prior to that? Um,
You'll regret basically if you
oh
don't
yeah,
get
yeah, that's it.
involved.
Yeah. So my point to them was literally the idea that, we're seeing in fast forward, like we're seeing the emergence of a new money, and the last time society saw this was over millennia with gold,
Yeah.
and it is now a far greater risk. I mean, it's always been, but like fundamentally more so now, it's a far greater risk to have zero exposure or zero involvement to Bitcoin, than it is to do so. And I hope that meme starts to pick up, um, so that everyone, you know, it's, one could go back 5, 6 years and sort of acknowledge that, hey, there was an inherent amount of risk in getting into Bitcoin back then, right? It
Sure,
was still
sure.
small, it was still nascent. Like there was fuck all software, like you could have sent your Bitcoin to the wrong fucking person. Like it was a mess, right? And but that's a normal function of the stage of where it was at. Now, there's just no excuse. There's apps like what I'm working on with Amber. I mean, shit as Coinbase is, it's still like a fucking easy on-ramp. Like, there's no excuse anymore. And fundamentally now, the level of access to Bitcoin is so much greater that, anybody who's not doing it is literally just being ignorant. Like, they're choosing to be ignorant and arrogant, and that is a risk. Um, Far greater than being humble enough or open enough to learn it. If I'm going to use a Bruce Leeism, to sort of to empty their cup enough to actually take some of this in.
Yeah. And you're totally right. And so you can be excused if 5 years ago you were like, this is never going to work. But look, where we are now, we've had like three, four boom and busts, and it's reemerged from the ashes. We've got the biggest institutions in the world developing infrastructure to offer this to clients and all the associated services and stuff like that. Like, this is here now. They're
Yeah,
not going to turn around next year and be like, dump, like, oops, this obviously isn't going to work. Like, this is here to stay, and the people that still have their head in the sand, it's difficult for me to relate to them because whatever criticism you might have had 5 years ago, they would
it's
have
not
been
there
hard
anymore.
to defend. But now, I mean,
Yeah,
like, Fidelity doing custody and some of the biggest institutions getting involved, and again, the fact that it hasn't died, it's like, what more do you need to change your opinion that this thing is just fucking funny money scheme, Ponzi scheme, whatever? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what more do you
Dude,
have to see?
furthermore, like the amount of education and podcasts, like what you're doing, Stefan, the Marty and Matt, like fucking, there's so much content out there now. Like 5 years ago, you didn't have that. Like 5 years ago, you had fucking Roger Ver crying on TV about babies dying. Like, yeah, you could say that you got turned off
Yeah.
because there was a fucking idiot talking about this shit who, managed to trip over and fall into a bunch of Bitcoin early on. But now, like, there's so much on YouTube. There's so much, like, and whilst that comes with its own problems, right? Is the noise versus signal. I just think, again, coming back to our earlier point about toxicity and about that stubborn minority, is that we, the Bitcoiners, have been consistent. We have been there in the ups, the downs, when everyone was saying, oh yeah, fucking that just shit just blew up in your face, didn't it? Like, we have been there consistently producing content, educating people, being there for people, you know, as hodlers, as, advocates, as people, doing episodes and podcasts and all this sort of shit. Like all the other garbage, man, that all fucking disappeared. It was all just weak fucking chase the next fucking bubble versus us. We rode the shit in the downs, in the ups, in the whole lot. And people have that material now. They have the people that they can go out and listen to, and or not listen to in the sense that I'm fucking Alex Almighty, take my word for it, but listen in the sense that take it in, make your own fucking judgments, and do it from a first principles basis.
Yeah.
Um, it's all there now, man. Like yeah,
I kind
I
of,
have.
sorry, go
You go
ahead.
first. Yeah. No, I was just gonna say I've no remorse for anybody who sits there and dismisses it now, because at this point in time it's just pure arrogance or ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that i- is for me, whether I can, whatever it is in life that I'm confronting, like I look closely at the conviction of the people that are promoting something, right? So whether it's Bitcoin or many different other areas. And one of the questions I ask on this, and I'll ask you later in the rapid fire portion, is at what price would you sell 75% or more of your Bitcoin without
Yeah.
the need, without the necessity to do so? The reason why I ask that question is because I want to show the listeners how much conviction people have. And the answer has never been like, oh, 5 million bucks a coin, 10 million bucks a coin, $1 billion bucks a coin. The answer is always never. And
Hmm.
so when you encounter that level of conviction about something, it's got to at least cause you to stop and think and be like, what is inspiring this level of conviction in people? And
Hell
then
yeah.
that answer will probably get you really, get you really going on that on the trail, on the rabbit hole.
Yep. 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 I was on BTC Magazine did a podcast with me a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know when it's going to come out, but I was talking about how, like, if Bitcoin was anything else, like, and I know you can't compare it to a company or anything like that, but if it was anything else you know by any standard definition of success, Bitcoin would be considered the greatest success in society. It's been around for fucking 10 years straight. It's stronger than when it started. It keeps getting stronger. The momentum keeps increasing. It's grown into this $250 billion, savings account, blah blah blah. But most importantly, it's got a pack of, I'll call us all raving lunatics,
Yeah.
doing podcasts, doing fucking conferences, doing this, doing that. Dude, the company who's the company who's arguably got the most amount of raving fans in the world is probably Apple. Mate, they would fucking give all their money to have like supporters like what we have. Like to have a fraction of what the Bitcoin community has. Like you tell me, you show me one other thing in the world that has um people with this level of conviction willing to die on the hill, and willing to stand for what they believe in. Nothing. There is
Nope.
fucking nothing else out there.
Nope. And it's wild because also, and this is conviction is obviously part of this, but the people that are engaging in the space, and especially from like a core development level, like how do you stop something where it's kind of it's voluntary based, like people are
Yeah.
contributing to it because they see the future value in it and they want to contribute to it. And yes, the incentive structure is there that if they're owners of pieces of the network, they benefit from the price going up. But like nobody's being paid salaries here on a core level. People are just like, this needs to exist, and I'm gonna spend my time on it without direct compensation. I mean,
Yep.
that's another thing. When you consider that for the first time, you've got to stop and think, be like, wow, like what other things in society inspire that level of dedication, work, and commitment without direct reward?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. No, yeah, that doesn't exist. Like I said this on I think it was with what's his name, with Brady and Guy Swan at Bitcoin 2019. We were having a chat and the guys were like, we were talking about Amber, and I just literally said, I found the thing that I'm gonna dedicate and devote this stage of my life to, and however many stages thereafter. And I don't care how big the competitors are that come into the space, because I'll fucking do this for free.
Right.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Come at me. Like I don't care. Like, you cannot fucking stop me.
And I don't know if you saw the article. I think it was released a day or two ago by Nick Carter. Or
Oh, dude, it's literally sitting on my screen as my next article. I love Nick's work.
right. And so I read it last night actually, and he basically encapsulates what we've just been discussing. That like this is we all know this is a revolution, but he kind of gets into the weeds a bit more about that, and just like most revolutions, people are inspired by the cause. They're not mercenaries that have to be paid to
Yeah,
march
yeah,
on something. They're literally willing to sacrifice themselves for the cause. And it's
yeah, dude. You just said a word there that triggered me. Is mercenaries versus missionaries.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah. Yeah, we are the fucking missionaries. And I mean, I'm not religious or any of that sort of shit, but there's so many religious undertones in this space. It's fucking funny.
I get into them all the time.
Oh, dude, have you ever spoken to or met or interacted with Haas McCook?
Nope.
Okay, you definitely should. So he's another Australian Bitcoiner, like old school Bitcoiner, fucking legend. We call him Father Haas because he's he's just got this presence where um you know he, I'll give a little anecdote from him. When someone asked him about, oh, I've gotten into crypto. Have you heard of, what do you think about Ripple? And his answer to that was, never heard of it. And it's like the most demeaning, like, it just,
are you a fan of MMA? Do you watch MMA?
dude, I used to do a bit of that myself, but I haven't watched or, actually done an MMA for
It,
years.
it, it
But
it reminds me of the best comeback. So Conor McGregor was at a press conference with a bunch of the main fights for the year. They do these are the main fights for the upcoming 6 months or whatever. And so he was he stole the show. Obviously, he was running his mouth and all this kind of stuff, and he was saying how there's nobody to fight him, blah blah blah. And Jeremy Stevens, which is like a top five 145 pounder,
hmm
big puncher, lots of power. He's in the back row basically, and Connor's saying like, "Who the fuck can fight me? Who is there for me?" And Stevens is like, "Right here, the hardest hitting puncher in the 145-pound division." And Connor just goes, "Who the fuck is that
exactly, yeah.
guy?" It's like the best comeback of all time.
It's the ultimate shutdown. But
Yeah.
yeah, after this call, I'll send you some of Haas's stuff. But he wrote a couple articles about, the Church of Bitcoin, and, and this idea of tithing Bitcoin, and, like people putting 10% of their salary and tithing it into Bitcoin are actually performing the greatest form of charity for the world, because they're fundamentally helping everybody else in the world. And it's just some really interesting undertones. And he talks about how the different level of believers, represent the different level of believers in religion, like, the high priest, the this, the that, and it's just a really good take. And Haas is a great guy. You should definitely have him on as well.
Yeah, I'll take that introduction for sure. But I think if this thing keeps progressing the way we probably both expect it to, those narratives are just going to get stronger and stronger. Because it's going to, as it permeates more philosophies, more areas of life, more of the normal quote unquote real world. I mean, these things are going to be inescapable over time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I've got my next business. It's going to be called the Church of Bitcoin.
Well, I was speaking with Gigi the other day, and he was like, "I can't wait for there to be like Bitcoin monks and Bitcoin
Yeah.
temples and shit like that." It's like, yeah, probably. That's probably gonna happen.
Oh man.
Mate, I'm gonna ask you about Amber now, but just before I do, will we fuck up the connection or the situation if you turn around and get that natural light on your face
Ah,
instead of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
your back?
Let's switch. Let's switch.
Yeah,
How's
but
that?
I've been looking at like Darth Vader for the last 10
Oh, yeah,
minutes. Yeah, we're
yeah.
good.
Not dodgy at all.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I want to keep going on some of these things, but before we do, like, why don't we just get the rundown on Amber and kind of how you came to it, what's the purpose, all that stuff.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's really simple. Is I've been harping on about Bitcoin for God knows, 3.5, maybe, getting into 4 years now. Fuck, it's 2020. Holy shit.
It's
Yeah. So
wild.
Dude, it's wild. We are about to close out the decade, that Bitcoin has been in existence. Incredible. But yeah, so I've been running around telling people to buy it, and effectively the objections that I've been getting are, it's too hard. I don't know where to buy it. I don't know how to buy it. I don't know how much to buy it. I don't know which one of all the fucking shit coins to buy and all this sort of stuff. So, um, I just thought I'd try and answer that in one clean, simple product, which allows the average person to download an app, link their bank account for, simple direct debit. They can set a frequency and an amount, and they can dollar cost average their way into Bitcoin and basically remove the stupid out of people's decision-making process when getting into Bitcoin. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as you start trying to fuck around with the markets and trying to read tea leaves and try to trade and think, tops and bottoms and fucking all this horse shit, you're just going to get yourself into trouble. The best methodology with this thing is like, and I kind of even try and transcend the idea of investing in Bitcoin to collecting Bitcoin. So I came up with an analogy, and I think I mentioned it on Stefan's podcast, which is, buying Bitcoin now is analogous to collecting shiny yellow rocks when society was using shells as a means of storing value and transacting transacting value, right? So, and those yellow shiny rocks in the beginning couldn't buy shit. You couldn't buy a single fucking shell. You couldn't buy a blade of fucking grass or a grain of salt for an entire rock of this yellow shiny shit that people couldn't eat, they couldn't cook with it, they couldn't wear it, they couldn't do anything with it. But as society slowly by slowly realized the objective attributes that it had, and realized that it could be used as an object or a good that could represent the work or the energy that we put into society, we started to agree that it was a good object or a good medium that could be used as money. And the smart people who in the early days were collecting these fucking yellow shiny rocks that everyone thought they were stupid for doing ended up being the people who held disproportionate amounts of wealth. So what we are doing now in Bitcoin is we are collecting fucking wealth. We're collecting the hardest money possible on the bet or on the premise that the rest of the world will, whether through choice or through necessity, also realize that this is the most superior, profound form of, crystallized work or crystallized energy, money, that has ever existed. And that is what I want Amber to stand for. I've tried to build a product for the most low time preference form of money in existence, which is Bitcoin, and build a product that is also low time preference in nature, which is you can't fucking buy and gamble. There's no order books. There's none of that shit. It's just download, link your fucking account, set a frequency and an amount, and piss off.
Yeah.
Like, you can withdraw it to your cold storage if you want to at any point in time. You can do whatever the fuck you want. But this is a method for you to get yourself out of the way and get your fucking ego, if we're going to use that word, out of the way, get your arrogance out of the way, and just stack sats, just accumulate.
And get your fear out of the way. That stops a lot of people, because a lot of people think, I'm not an investor. I know nothing about financial markets. I know nothing about anything. This clearly isn't for me. And I think what you're saying is you're trying to create a solution where you take away a bit of the fear and uncertainty and apprehension about that, and say, don't look at it as an investment that you're going to sell in 1, 2, 3, 5 years. Yeah. Look at it as just this is a means by which you can accumulate something of value that you should have some of for whatever eventuality, right?
100%. You want to collect Bitcoin. That is what you want to do. You want to collect. Well, these days you can't really collect Bitcoin anymore, so you want to collect Sats. Right. That is literally what you're doing. Like the other analogy that I give is sort of, and I think Trace Mayer talks about this, is collecting Bitcoin today is claiming territory on this digital network that is finite in its unit availability. And it's kind of like I can't remember where I read this, but in something like 1780 or 1768 or whatever it was, Times Square was purchased from the Indians for a couple skins, so basically
Right.
like, what was the equivalent of $1.50 or some shit like that. So, the first settlers in America, they were collecting land, which is this scarce resource, and they were collecting property. They were collecting terrain, turf, like whatever the fuck you want to call it. Collecting Bitcoin today, you are doing that on the scarcest, most finite, most profound digital network in existence.
Yeah, and there's already an existing parallel that you can look to, and it's just to kind of say, look, what if you were an early investor in Google? You would have made a shitload of money, right? Yeah, that would have been sweet. What if you could have owned a portion of the internet and benefited from everything that was built on top of it? And it's kind of like a mind-blowing sort of a realization, right? And
Hmm.
I think we all agree that the value contained within the Bitcoin network will ultimately probably exceed that of the internet. And if to impress upon people that that's why you want to at least have some of this is because you don't want to be left out in the cold. You don't want to have no claim on ownership of this network, even if it's
Yeah.
just small, because like you said, it's going to get to the point where you're not able to stack Bitcoins. And
Hmm.
for many people, we may be there now, but
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
mean you can't access it. It doesn't mean you can't begin accumulating. And this is again the humble part. Don't think like I need to get all in now or it's not worth it.
Hmm.
A dollar a day will add up over 10 years.
Fuck yeah, man.
You know?
And it's also, so I'll touch on 2 points there. Number one is the you know the arrogance or the anti-humility about, oh, some people got into Bitcoin and they were buying it for a couple dollars, and now I have to buy it for $15,000 or whatever, and being, arrogant and saying, well, look, you know I'll wait till it comes back down, or whatever other fucking justification you give yourself because you're bitter that somebody else got in earlier than you did. And you will fucking keep yourself out of the greatest revolution in history
Yeah.
because you don't want to be humble enough to participate in something that somebody got into earlier than you. I have no fucking qualms with people who got in earlier than me. Like, I mean, maybe except for fucking Roger, because I just don't like that guy. Other than that, but a fool is soon parted with his money. So, Roger is a fool, and long term, that idiot will wreck himself, and that's just the beauty of a natural capitalist type system. But yeah, I think that bit of arrogance, and then also I just want to touch on the game theory around you know Bitcoin is just going to end up sucking everyone and everything in because the the cost benefit of not being involved is going to reach different people and different institutions and different organizations at different points in time. And when people tell me about, oh, well, what about governments? When is a government gonna do something about Bitcoin? And I'm gonna, like, my answer to that is when the game theory suggests that they are um, that it's a smarter decision for them to hold some now than not. And at some point in time, Bitcoin's game theory is just like economic game theory is literally kind of like biological game theory. Like it is a system. It is a system of survival. And for those that want to survive, the game of economics and society and everything that we see around us in the world, there will come a point in time where them being involved will trump not being involved. The question is just a matter of when.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And the game theory of Bitcoin is another of this such intriguing, unique facets of it. But
Hmm.
like people need to like we in Bitcoin we say in many different areas first slowly then all at once. And that's the type of behavior that the game theory inspires. So
Yes.
for example, if we're talking about governments or central banks or whatever, it'll be a trickle, it'll be nothing, nothing, nothing. And then once the game theory begins, let's say
Yes.
in earnest, then it's going to happen incredibly quickly because it'll be apparent the the risks and rewards of being involved and not being involved. And so
Yes.
it seems like it's way far off, but once it starts, it just comes right to the front. And this has happened. The game theory has played out in different levels and different parts of the network effect of Bitcoin's growth already. It's just a matter, and if you were waiting, or if in earlier parts of Bitcoin's growth, then you all of a sudden you realized instead of $100 was $1,000, instead of $1,000 was $10,000. And again, if we're right about this, then that'll keep playing out. And you want to, I mean, the sooner the better. Before the next game theory kind of opens up, right? Before that starts, you want to be getting your piece.
Yeah, well, so right now the game theory is strong enough for the funds and the large scale exchanges and institutions to start getting involved, right? Now, and by them now getting involved, because they're looking at it and they're saying, look at all these fuckers making money and shit, and we're missing out. So, the game theory suggests that they now want to get involved. And in doing so, they're going to strengthen it. And at some point in time, some sovereign is going to just say, well, fuck this. We're just going to hold some reserves. And that shit's going to leak. People are going to lose their minds. Some other sovereign's going to jump in, if they haven't already. And it's just going to perpetuate. And it's just, man, like, when I think about that, it just reminds me how fundamentally early we really, really are with this thing.
Right.
It's incredible, man.
Yeah. Well, this is another thing, and you mentioned ego and people that as being a reason why people don't get involved. I'm sure you listened. Well, I heard you say that you followed Peter Schiff before, and his.
I can't stand that guy.
I know his recent. Well, yeah, I can't stand him either. But he did say in his recent thing with Pomp, I think it was, is that after all he was denying everything and blah blah blah. But he said well, in any case, I missed it. It's at $10,000 now. I was looking at it when it was like 50. I missed it, and like you said, it's so early. If people could just check their ego and whatever else is prohibiting them from zooming out a little bit and seeing that at some point 10,000 is going to seem super cheap, right? But it keeps a lot of people out.
Yeah, there's a saying I like. I'm reading Atlas Shrugged again for the second time this year because I just love that book. If you ever read any of Ayn Rand's stuff?
No, actually, no.
Dude, man, I cannot recommend reading Atlas Shrugged more. It's
been on the list for a long time.
Dude, she practically predicted fucking Bitcoin 80 years ago or 70 years ago, whenever it was written.
Right.
I swear to God, it'll bring chills down your spine reading that shit. It is fucking incredible. But
I'll check it out.
There's a saying in there which is check your assumptions.
Right.
And I just love that saying, which is, check the assumption that you're making when you're sitting there and dismissing it. Check the assumption you're making when you think you've missed it. Check the assumption that you're making when you say this thing's a fucking scam, or you're just buying into some bullshit ideology, you're mixing it up with BitConnect, check your assumptions.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's called check your premises, which same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, always good advice for everything. But one of the things I was thinking about in preparation for this, man, was, being an entrepreneur, obviously lots of ups and downs, very frantic, kind of busy lifestyle, lots of uncertainty. And then you're in a space where there's so much going on, just to keep up with the goings on in Bitcoin is very difficult. Who wrote what article, new products, new services. And then in the background, you've got running this just insane and ever-growing optimism and excitement for what this thing will be and how it will change the world and how it could change your life and all that kind of stuff. Is it difficult to bring your mind down to something, to focus it down on your task at hand when this big crazy thing is happening in the background?
It is, man. It is. And this is sometimes what some of the community sometimes doesn't understand. I've had flack from some Bitcoiners about, Amber is, you guys don't have any wallet functionality in there. You don't support Bec32 and all this sort of stuff. And it's there's so much going on. And, I'm so enthralled by the space and all this shit that's happening and, how quick things are moving. You've got Lightning, you've got all this sort of stuff, right? But, when you're building a business, you can't move that fucking quickly. because number one, it's just impossible. Number two, unless you've gone and raised some fucking Ponzi scheme ICO and you've got 100 million in the bank, building a startup requires resources, and it requires, you know, building something within a set of constraints. So you just can't fucking do everything. You need to prioritize different things at different points in time. And then also you need to actually focus on the layer where you can add value. Like, I'm not going to, compete with Kraken, for example, on providing the best exchange service with the deepest order books and, the best advanced trading algo or what trading facility for people, because that's not the service I'm going to provide. So yes, whilst one could probably go and get a cheaper bit of Bitcoin through Kraken because they've got better liquidity, or if you're going to buy 100 grand worth of Bitcoin, you go and buy it off Kraken. They're going to have lower exchange fees because they're designed for something else. We have had to stay strong and say, look, that is not our product, that is not our market. We're building something which is going to act as an entry point for people, and trying to stay true to that course, I must admit, is difficult, because as a Bitcoiner, you see so many things going on and you just want to have your fingers in all of it. Like, I remember doing our roadmap up earlier this year, and I was like, all right, we're going to fucking do some lightning stuff. We're going to do this. We're going to build a wallet. We're going to do, all this sort of shit. And thankfully, like, I hired a head of operations to help me with the business about 4 or 5 months ago, and he's brilliant. Like, he's been the godsend for this company, because it's allowing me to step aside and stop whiplashing the fucking entire team with a new idea every 5 minutes.
Right.
And he's able to keep us true to the customer, the user base that we're trying to serve, and the mission, which is being the easiest and first place where someone can buy their fucking Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want to be. And if we can maintain that, then hey, long term, we can deliver other stuff. Whether it's Lightning functionality, whether it's some form of interest-bearing accounts, whether it's some form of merchant payment facilities, or paying your bills, or whatever the fuck it is. Like, we can do other things, but building that foundation, and this is probably analogous to Bitcoin as well, is we didn't need to go and raise the block size and fucking do smart contracts and do all this shit, because Bitcoin is optimized first for building a solid, secure foundation. Later, we'll be able to abstract the strength of that foundation and build other things above.
Mm-hmm.
So really, taking the time to not, I guess, not listen to the market for a moment, and not be, just yanked in every single direction about, what every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants today.
Yeah.
Being able to say no to that is really, really important when building a business, and trying to add some value along the way. So to your point, it's not easy. It's a hard slug building a business. Building any startup is fucking difficult, and any tech startup. But doing it in this industry where there's so much that you could potentially be doing, and so many things that people want to see, but at the same time trying to, like, really just get your piece right.
Yeah.
It's difficult, but hey, that's the challenge I chose.
Yeah. And
It's the legacy I want to leave.
If you're as involved and as kind of ear to the ground in the industry as, for example, you and I are, then things are, you keep abreast of the things that are changing so fast, and you kind of feel an obligation to stay up to date. You don't want to be left behind. You don't want to seem like an idiot, all that kind of stuff. But especially if you're building a business like you are, it's so important to remember what your mission and your market is, right? Like, it's super cool, all the tech and innovation. We love to geek out about it, and DIY hardware and Lightning and all this kind of stuff. But if your mission is to onboard the next 100 million users, or whatever it might be, like, that's a very specific specific service that you need to offer, and a very frictionless sort of service that you need to offer. And even relating it to, like we were saying before, if really the name of the game here is to accumulate and hold, like the Morpheus meme, right? Like, are you telling me that I'll be able to sell my Bitcoin for $10 million? Like, no, Nia, I'm telling you, when the time comes, you won't have to. It's like, why would you want to trade? Like, even people have an inclination to trade because it's volatile and because it's a super liquid asset and all the rest of it. But like, I think the narrative that's beginning to emerge, and that obviously that you're trying to cater to, is no, just get in, and then once you're in, secure
Stay
it,
in.
and yeah, stay in and get further in over time. And that focusing on that is obviously going to come at the exclusion of like some of the sexier things that are going on at the fringes.
Yep.
But
Yep.
that's the name of the game.
That's it. One must, and like I was talking to someone the other day and talking about how important a constraint is. Like, the most creative people are those who can set a constraint and work within that, because that's when creativity can flourish. When you don't have constraints, you don't have a boundary within which to operate. And like that is analogous
It's
to
interesting.
Bitcoin's $21 million 21 million coin constraint, the 1 megabyte block constraint. Like all of these things, you, society is built, around or within the boundaries or the constraints that we collectively agree are the fucking best. Um, and that's when you can actually build things of value. So, and a constraint by definition means that you're gonna have to say no to some things, and it takes fucking courage to do that, man.
Yeah.
Like, the like it was a constraint for us to only offer Bitcoin. Like in the beginning, I was going to offer Ethereum until the more I fucking hung around, the more I realized that was a steaming pile of shit, right? So I introduced a constraint in the product, which is it's Bitcoin fucking only.
Yeah.
Guess who didn't introduce a constraint? Coinbase. They went from Bitcoin to fucking B Trash to, you know, Litecoin to whatever other shitcoin that they've got listed on there.
Yeah.
Hey, they threw constraints out the window and they threw their integrity out with it.
Low
Whereas,
time preference, right? They want as
fuck
many
yeah.
trading fees and all that kind of stuff as they can generate, and they'll shill, shit coins all day long if they
Yeah.
have to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas, we chose to have a constraint, to be narrow, to be the signal in and amongst all the noise, um, and, deliver something, which has, which comes with some fucking level of integrity,
Yeah.
as opposed to, throwing that out the window and just, being like blown with the fucking wind.
I agree. I dig it 100%, man. And like when people interact with that, you're also educating de facto by saying like, we only give you the opportunity to accumulate Bitcoin. You should be asking yourself why that is, and that
Yeah.
sets you on a path as well. So, constraints do exclude everything else, but simplicity is also a beautiful thing. And if the more simple and streamlined you can make something for people, especially something that's extremely foreign to them,
Hmm.
it's just about finding that and making it click. But I'm a huge fan of simplicity and constraints properly applied.
Yeah, correct. Well, since simplicity is in itself a form of constraint. So it's a form of intelligent, sensible constraint. Constraint's a really contentious word, because, it in some ways it implies a limitation of freedom, right?
Right.
And, so some people, like constraint unabated or constraint not agreed to, via consensus of, those being constrained, is very dangerous. And that's what you have with, authoritarian regimes and all that sort of stuff. When I talk about constraint, I talk about a voluntary constraint for the purpose of, allowing the rules to be known, the rules of the game to be known. So Bitcoin's constraints around 1 megabyte blocks and 21 million coins is a constraint with which we all opt into and agree to for the purpose of knowing the game that we're playing and being able to verify and validate what we have, what's out there, blah, blah, blah. So it is a very fucking important constraint.
Yeah.
Whereas, you've got the ETH monkeys running around and saying, oh, a fixed supply doesn't work, we'll just keep printing shit. They have no fucking constraints because they have no integrity or conviction around what they're actually doing. So they'll just fucking make it up as they go.
Yeah.
Like,
I think constraints properly applied are used to maximize the expression of whatever the thing is, right? So if you think about it like playing the piano, like you mentioned this a few seconds ago, like the rules of the game are such that it allows for the maximum expression of the beauty of the music that can be played. If you release all those constraints, then you just have a mess of noise and it doesn't make any sense and it's
it's
not
noise.
pleasurable.
Yeah. Correct. Anything you look at, like language, you've got 26 letters in the alphabet, you've got 5 vowels, and you've got 21 consonants. You know, change that shit up, you just get gibberish. Nobody understands what the fuck's going on. You have a canvas, you want to paint a painting on a fucking canvas. The canvas, a perimeter is the constraint. Now you can go and be creative within that constraint. And so yeah, it's interesting concept.
Yeah. Um, Alex, I'm going to break into the rapid fire in just a moment, but in prepping for this discussion, I listened to presentations you made on YouTube, podcasts you've done with other people, things you've written on Hacker Noon and stuff like that. And, I definitely feel an affinity because I feel like we're probably close to the same age. We kind of came up in a similar way. I mean, we already shared the kind of gold and that sort of story. And I think we both kind of have an extremely, perhaps over curious, hyper aware sort of mind and way of interacting with the world. And I'm not saying that in a boastful way. In many cases, that can be detrimental, and it has been for me. But what apart from anything we've discussed already, either within Bitcoin or external, what's kind of like setting your intellectual self on fire these days? Like, what do you spend a lot of time thinking about, or gets you excited, or because I know you studied history, anthropology, all this kind of stuff. Fair game, but I'm just wondering, like, where's the depth of your rabbit hole at the moment with any given area of interest?
Where do I start? Let me I mean, I've I want to. I'll read out a couple ideas that I've sort of written here on one of my notes that I'm going to sort of expand on, whether through video or through writing. But this idea about like personal responsibility and sovereignty. I think is such an interesting concept, and something that I can't remember if Naval said this a little while ago, but he put up a tweet which was like, the future of the world is going to be, small free states that are, protected and sovereign. They're protected through technology, and they're sovereign and they're free. In between these large, authoritarian, fucking homogenous states that that you kind of don't want to be in, right?
Yeah.
And we can do that today because we've got a free economic system, through which these smaller free states can sort of operate. Now that's sort of at a macro level. Then at a micro level is, for the first time in history, we're moving into a time when through technology and through something like Bitcoin, we're able to be individually sovereign to a degree that we've never been able to be before. And that's such a profound like shift. It's such a profound zeitgeist of our time, if I can put it that way. That I don't know whether 99.9% of the world even realizes is actually happening. And like the preppers have been talking about this shit for so long. Like, I went through a phase where I was a fucking prepper, ready for the end of the world. Like, I was buying gold and silver, dude. There you go. and like, you know you think that each generation has their group of preppers who are fucking crazy enough to think that that this is the time that it's all going to blow up in our face, and I'm going to be ready with my baked beans and gold and shit and lead. But it just seems realer and realer, and I don't know whether I'm just in my own bubble here or whether we're in our own bubble, but it just seems times are changing, right? And this personal responsibility and self-sovereignty, sort of being the counterculture, being that contrarian viewpoint that's emerging now in a grassroots fashion, but having the kind of the foundation or the substance to be able to be self-sovereign or be personally responsible, unlike we've ever had, ever before. Like, thousands of years ago, you might have been self-sovereign, but you're out in the fucking savannah, and you get your ass eaten by a fucking lion. That we're not in that same space anymore. So that's one big area. I think I'm also another interesting thing that I want to write about is this idea of like, and I know I've seen Jimmy Song tweet about this a couple of times, talking about how the elitists are the ones who have ruined the world and all this sort of shit, and don't be an elitist. I want to question that. I think the word elite is such an important concept. Like being part of the 1%, I think is so important to society. Like how do I say this without people fucking pulling the pitchforks out? It's 1% because you're the fucking best. Being an elitist because you're the best is something that everybody should strive for. You want to be elite. You don't want to be an average fuck. The people we have problems with are not the elites. It's the rent seekers who are claiming to be elite, but they're not fucking elite. They're leeches. The elite are the best. The elite are the ones who are the contrarians. The elite are the 1%ers. And we can't all be the 1%ers in everything, but we can all find the thing that we can all be elite in, right? And that's just
awesome.
another
I love that.
really interesting concept that I like. So and it kind of almost ties into this idea of personal responsibility and self-sovereignty, is like, being an accomplished, deep, sovereign person is something that really fucking fascinates me, and it just has so many parallels with with everything that's going on in Bitcoin, that it just gets me so much more enthralled in in what we're all doing, what we're all fighting for here.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And right now in the culture today, the predominant kind of view of the elite is like people that have way more than they should have, and as a result, we should take some from them. And obviously, there's a lot of shitty behavior by those people, but again, I think it's a manifestation of the system on which it's built, not an inherent flaw. I mean, like you said, it's a law of nature that there's going to be a distribution of the tallest tree, the most successful people, the strongest animals, the fastest runner. That's just how things play out, and that may be impossible to transcend, and we probably shouldn't want to. But I love I love what you said in terms of everyone can't be elite in the same category, but everyone can be elite in a category. And I do think that using the foundation of a system using a sound money like Bitcoin will get people to, if not totally stop, focus less on only being elite in the, let's say, financial category, i.e. being in the 1% of wealth, and give them the confidence, the freedom, whatever, to pursue elite behavior, elite objectives, elite capacity in the area for which they're most where they have the talent, where they want to devote their energy, where they have the most interest and curiosity. It'll take the focus off just the accumulation of that money that's in the system.
Dude, it's if money is a function or a byproduct of the value you add in society, right? Then if you're elite at something and society wants it, you should be duly fucking rewarded. That the problem is today is money does not map back to input in society or value or any of those things. It doesn't map correctly to that, because if you're one of the privileged few, if you're the rent seeker, not like I really want to separate rent-seeking elites with actual fucking elites.
Yeah.
If you're an elite and you've gone and added incredible value to society, if you're an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos or some shit like that, you fucking deserve every penny that you have and more, because you've added that value. And you deserve that shit. Like if you are the best fucking fighter in the world and everyone wants to watch you, you deserve that fucking shit, right? And then if you're stupid enough to blow it all, fucking, you deserve that shit too, right? But what is irresponsible and what creates distortions in society is when people can acquire the resource that measures value input in society, i.e. money, by not adding any fucking value.
Right.
And that is currently able to be done because we have such a shitty monetary system where, the few who are the rent-seeking elite can print this fucking resource out of thin air, whilst the rest of us have to work. Like they basically, in their world, tails they win, heads you lose.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And that's why incentive structures are so important. And that's why Bitcoin is so exciting, because the incentive structure is going to produce a different type of behavior. The incentive structure in the
fuck,
system we have now produces the behavior you just described, and it's
yeah,
detrimental to a lot of people. You change the incentive structure, and we get a different scenario. And I think that's what a lot of us are hopeful for, and why we're so into this. And just back to the self-sovereignty piece, I got a bunch of shit from friends, a number of years ago, because I bought a bunch of dried food, right? And I wasn't like a doomsday person. I didn't think the world
yeah,
was going to come to an end. First of all, I'm from an island, right, in the North Atlantic, the east coast of Canada,
yeah,
and so it's routine that if there's a snowstorm, a winter storm, whatever, the boats will stop coming in for a few days. The grocery stores will be empty. Like that happens pretty much every winter at some point. And so, from an extremely pragmatic point of view, 6 months, a year's worth of dry food for like 2 to 4 people was like, let's say 2,000 US, something like that.
yep,
And I just thought, best case scenario, and it lasts for 25 years. Best case scenario, I never have to use this. I amortize the 2,000 over 25 years, and I'm okay with that expense, right? Worst case scenario, I do need this, and there's literally nothing that I would need more. And how much value would I place on it if I needed it? That's how I was thinking about it. And I determined that I would place food for myself and 3 family members, let's say, for 6 to 12 months. I would pay everything, and my family would do the same, everything we own, to have that, because that's our link to survival. And so I weighed those two things and thought, 2 grand, and throwing 2 grand down the drain versus a safety net of some kind. I spent 2 grand on a fucking, not that I have spent that kind of money on a trip somewhere, right? Like
yeah. It's
traveling for a few
stupidity.
months. It's
Yeah,
stupidity.
yeah, yeah,
A couple of weekend, a few 6 months of weekends out, however your spending habits are, but like it's not a tremendous amount of money. And so
yeah.
I just made the bet that it was a worthwhile investment. And of course, I got torn up by friends like you prepper, your doomsday and shit. And it's just a matter of enhancing sovereignty,
Dude,
not being at the whims of the boat that's coming in, of the farmer's drought or anything like that. And I think we're entering a generation now where, I said this the other day on a podcast, where the 20th century was globalization, right? You want avocados from Mexico, you want fucking fish from Iceland, whatever. Technology is allowing us to be more and more self-sovereign, and it's so exciting, because the more sovereign you are, the less people can lean on you, the less dependent you are on people, and the less they can force your behavior by saying, we'll unplug your power, we'll cut off your water, we'll
yeah,
cut off
yeah.
your food supply. The more sovereign you are physically, the more sovereign you can be intellectually and psychologically. And then that's freedom. That is true freedom. And so
It's absolutely.
when we get to the point where we can have our own food source, our own energy source, be our own bank, manage our health more independently, all those things which are happening now and converging. I mean, I'm so excited for the society that's going to produce, because it's going to be a lot more free thinking, free living individuals that can interact on a basis of genuineness and creativity and trust, rather than trying to one up each other, trying to expose advantages that you have over people, trying to manipulate things, and so that's a huge motivation for me.
Dude, it's yeah. Everything you said is spot on, and then I think one of the other things you just described there was the same. So you just this is again another reason why you're in Bitcoin. You just described asymmetry in your decision around buying 2 grand worth of dried food. The asymmetry was you lose 2 grand on the downside, but you save your fucking life on the upside.
Yeah.
That is asymmetry, and this is what people don't fucking understand. They don't understand asymmetry. They're willing to be comfortable and disregard tail risks, when they happen. So what you did was you bought an option, and hey, sometimes options expire fucking worthless.
Right.
That's the name of the game. But that smart option holder is the one who fucking survives or
Right.
succeeds
Yeah.
when the shit hits the fan, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Yeah, I just think I love the self-sovereignty awareness that Bitcoin is bringing to people that start engaging with it. And, I'm sure there'll be some turbulent times in the quote unquote transition, but uh, yeah, I mean, that's why we're in this, so that we can have a better world ultimately, as cheesy as it might sound.
Dude, it's not cheesy at all, my man. It is it is uh, every generation's fought for something better. We just are lucky enough to have the technological capability and now the monetary capability to actually really make things better in a profound way. So
Yeah.
fucking power to us, bro.
All right. I know you got plans for the day, so let me get going on these rapid fires. You good to go?
Let's fucking do it.
All right. You know the how we get down. I'll just say something. You answer however long or short as you like. You can say pass, and the last section is word association. I'm just going to say a word. You blurt out the first thing that comes to your mind. Good?
Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
What is money?
Uh, money is like money's something we map to energy and work and the input we have into society.
If you had to explain Bitcoin to your grandmother or someone over 80, what would you say?
Run the opposite direction. I just I think gold is probably the most useful.
Bitcoin is important or interesting to you? Primary.
The primary reason. I think I kind of look at society in layers, and I think the most fundamental layer of society is the fabric through which we cooperate, and that layer is money. So I think that's probably the most important thing about Bitcoin is that it reinvents that layer and fixes that layer in the same way as energy and time are these fixed concepts in the universe. So I think that right there is probably the most profound piece. And off the back of that, we can really build an advanced civilization.
I want to go down the advanced civilization rabbit hole, but maybe for another time. What has been your most
Yeah.
effective method of educating people about Bitcoin in conversation or more formally via talks or that kind of stuff?
Oh, man, I generally try and red pill people on the gains. So I talk to people about Bitcoin as this emergent money. Let me take a step back. Whenever I explain Bitcoin, I always start with money. So I make that I identify why that's important, and then I talk to why Bitcoin is a better form of money. And then I tie in the opportunity around collecting Bitcoin as this thing that the rest of the world doesn't realize what it's valued at. So I use the collecting gold analogy when everyone's using shells.
Hmm.
And off the back of that, I've got a very high hit rate on converting people at least downloading Amber and starting some fucking collecting of Bitcoin. And then off the back of that, let them fall down the rabbit hole.
Can Bitcoin be stopped? If so, what is Bitcoin's biggest vulnerability? If not, why not?
Oh, dude, I think I wrote about this in the Bitcoin Times that I wrote earlier in 2019. I think we've passed that point of being able to stop it. I mean, if everybody all of a sudden just fucking gave up, if there was some, mass mind control that someone could, release on the world and, make us all, apathetic to our own fucking sovereignty, then maybe, but I just don't think that's realistic. So I feel like Bitcoin has so much momentum now. The point, the opportunity to stop it came and went at least 4 or 5 years ago. And at this point in time, it's got so much momentum and so much strength. And then there's this concept I call the arrogance to greed kind of ratio or gap or whatever the fuck we want to call it, is that the powers that be, or the people who are larger, the banks and all that sort of stuff, the central banks, etc., they're too arrogant to believe that this is something. Whilst on the other side, we've got the opportunistic entrepreneurs and the markets and the exchanges and all that sort of shit pouring capital and building this thing at a rate that is so fucking fast that by the time anyone wakes up, it is way too fucking late, if not already. So it's game on.
What was your most recent aha or level up in your understanding of Bitcoin?
Oh shit. Most recent. I feel like that piece around sovereignty, or also actually let's use this one. I was speaking to a friend who just couldn't get their head around, uh, how a deflationary, money or a disinflationary money could work, and I kind of transcended the argument of inflation, deflation, all that sort of shit. I just said money is most functional when it maps directly to work and input and energy.
Mm.
So let's fix money in the same way as work and input and energy is fucking fixed. And so what I like to think about Bitcoin is not as inflation and deflation and all that shit. I like to think about Bitcoin as a fixed monetary unit. And that for me was like really aha. Even for me, as I was explaining it to her, I was like, "Fucking, this is big."
I'm blowing my
Fixed
own
is
mind
fixed.
here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, what do you think will be Bitcoin's biggest impact on society?
Uh, I think changing the underlying incentive for society. So in a Bitcoin monetary system or in a Bitcoin society, the the incentive is to produce, and the incentive is to have a lower time preference, such that future the future is fundamentally um, more important than just the fucking immediate sugar hit of
Mm.
now. I think shifting that has second, third, and multiple order effects after that that really that you have a very different looking world than you have with today, where the 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 incentive is for now, and the highest possible time preference.
When, if ever, do you think the first central bank will start adding Bitcoin to their reserves? And add on, will they exist in 20 years?
I think 5 to 10 years. I think they may still exist in 20 years. I mean, depending on how fast this thing fucking moves. But I think, as we were talking about earlier, the game theory, I think, at least around the next halving or the halving after that. So not the 2020 halving, but the 2024 or 2028. At that point in time, the game theory is going to suggest that they should hold some, lest they become completely fucking irrelevant. And then that'll precipitate the next great move upwards.
What is the biggest mistake you've made with Bitcoin?
Um, yeah, a couple of my earlier, my initial dismissiveness around Bitcoin. The first time I heard it, the second time I heard about it, that they are by far like I don't have any regrets in life except for that.
How do you feel about Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin's creator, being anonymous and the coins? I usually say he, she, they, but Satoshi Nakamoto is a male name, so I'm just going to go with he from now on, I think.
Yeah,
How he, and the coins he likely controls.
look, I don't think he controls those coins anymore, so I think that key has been deleted, most likely, particularly if you know he fucking had any inkling of how big this could have been, and I think he fucking definitely did. So I think that's the coins bit. And disappearing was the most profound thing that could have happened. Like, there's a meme that I always, use with people when they're trying to understand. Oh, if no one owns Bitcoin, then how can you trust it? The meme that I give is, um, you know, Mark Zuckerberg. Sorry, Facebook launches Libra, US sends cease and desist to Mark Zuckerberg. Satoshi launches Bitcoin, US Congress sends cease and desist to dot 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 dot.
Right.
Like fucking that right there was like I have not seen anything so like that was the checkmate. Fucking
Yeah, just a
profound.
cherry on the top. The architecture and everything was so brilliant and innovative and stuff. And then just the final little like piece to make it perfect was
Yep.
like poof, disappear, right?
Yeah. Adios, motherfuckers.
Uh,
And it's yours.
what have you learned about yourself, or how have you changed, if at all, as a result of learning about and interacting with Bitcoin?
Man, it is really like made me the things that we mentioned earlier around like I've always been a little bit of an elitist by my definition of elitist. I've always wanted to be the best, so that sort of really aligned with me. But the the concept of like low time preference and being like bringing a greater degree of patience and just quiet intelligence in my life, I think has been profound. Like this idea of this is happening, and having that longer term outlook, on a greater movement than just me has been really important for me, I think. And then not to mention, the fucking people I've met, in the process. Like I finally feel like I'm not just some fucking weirdo who can't relate to anyone. Like I found my tribe.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think a lot of people resonate with that. Um, at what price would you permanently sell over 75% of the Bitcoin you hold, assuming no necessity to do so?
Yeah, I ain't selling my. You can tear it out of my fucking cold hands, man. Like I ain't selling Bitcoin no matter what. Like I had this discussion with my brother, who he's not a Bitcoiner. I'm slowly turning him. He's a traditional markets guy, macro guy, blah blah blah, all that shit. And he's sitting there talking to me about you know how Bitcoin's something that you should try and make some money off. And I'm like, well, look, I'm not measuring my wealth in fucking dollars, and I'm not trying to make money out of Bitcoin. I'm trying to accumulate Bitcoin. So I'm measuring, what I have in how much Bitcoin I have. And that's a very different place to come from than the speculators who are trying to use Bitcoin as a vehicle through which they can get rich in, dollar terms.
Yep.
So I ain't selling nothing.
Have you ever purchased other coins? If so, are you likely to do so again in the future?
Oh, I did. I went through a little shitcoin phase, in, what was it, early 2017 through to mid 2017, and, towards the end, I was trying to like trade up and earn more Bitcoin, and I will never fucking touch another coin. Um, I don't give a shit if Satoshi comes back and launches another fucking Bitcoin. He can kiss my fucking ass. I'm sticking with the original. This, yeah, I ain't buying shit
What is your most
ever again.
controversial or contrarian view or opinion, if none, on Bitcoin? Any subject, fair game.
Ooh, maybe that elitist one. I think a lot of people, I think I grind people, the wrong way around that elitist concept. So I'm a proud fucking elitist, and I believe in being elite, and I believe in being the best. And I believe that, the the um the the power laws that operate in nature should fundamentally operate in every fucking strata of the world, and every strata of society. Like, may the best man fucking win is one of the most important sayings. And that may the best man, woman, whatever the fuck you are in whatever you're doing, like, that fundamental. Like, I do not like equality, and I don't agree with that as a concept. So I just think that yeah, be fucking elite. Let the best people take up the role of the elitist.
Ballpark estimate of Bitcoin's price in 5 years.
5 years, probably the mill. I think we're gonna be there at the next halving.
Do you believe there are any reliable ways at spotting a paradigm shift? If so, what are they?
Um, I think it's harder if you're outside of the bubble. But then, yeah, that's a tough one. I think there is. I think if you take a first principles approach, and kind of spend the time that's required to understand like a grassroots movement, um, and understand like the principles through which it's growing. I think you potentially can, but it's very hard because time and place really has an effect on that, and fundamentally is everyone at some point in time spots the paradigm shift. It's just at, the question is when.
Right.
um, has it already shifted? I don't know.
Do you have a morning routine? If so, what is it?
Man, I operate much better when I have a routine, but I've just been useless with routine recently because I got so much shit on. But generally, I'm at the gym in the morning, lifting weights, and then I try and get into the office as early as I can. And these days, part of my routine has become fucking Twitter, so I got to stop doing that shit because I spend too much time on Twitter.
Don't we all? Um, how do you define success?
Ah, here's the elitist in me, winning.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think like for me, success is really strongly tied to, I mean, you know, like getting in there and fucking putting in effort, and whether you fuck it up or not, like, having an outcome out of the effort that you put in, I think is a form of success. But I still think the aim of the game is to still fucking win, right? Is to strive to win and to win whatever your definition is. I think is fundamentally important. So yeah, for me, succeeding is if I set some parameters and I kick that fucking goal, I feel stronger, and that's probably also a result of the stage of life that I'm choosing to be in, which is a far more competitive stage. Maybe my definition of success will, or not maybe, but it will evolve over time as I enter different stages of life.
Yeah. Where or who is your go-to place to learn more about Bitcoin?
Um, I love Nick Carter's writing, so I must admit, like, he's one of the most pragmatic writers in Bitcoin. Twitter by far is like one of the main places. These podcasts. Dude, I hadn't heard of your podcast until I heard American Hodl on it. I was like, fucking, this is a mad podcast. I love what you do with your rapid fire and stuff like that. So
Thanks,
so yeah,
man.
so podcasts are a big one. And I mean, I just love reading broadly, and I just find so many parallels in all of, like, I'm studying systems thinking at the moment in my own time, and I'm just finding so many parallels to what's going on in Bitcoin and stuff like that. So yes, it's from as many places as I can.
Final question. What is the one most important action that I or anyone listening can take to up our game in your area of expertise? So if we want to improve, what's the best way to do so at this point? It can be related to Bitcoin, but if you got
Yep.
some other area.
Look, spending the time to understand why and not just what. So, like, if you're talking about business and startups and all that sort of shit, like, people will go and hang out at fucking meetups and listen to a couple fucking people talk on a panel, and they get all excited about running their own business. What I say is, go and fucking read a book like Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz and find out what the fucking deepest, darkest, most ugliest part of this shit is, and then decide to do it, and understand the first principles behind what you're doing. Go and read the stories about the people who've sort of, been there before, and get some context, because when you have context, you can make better decisions. And that same thing applies to Bitcoin, to business, to relationships, to all that sort of stuff. And fundamentally, once you have a little bit of context, that what you want to do then is, with that preparation, is go and fucking do the shit, and get some skin in the game, because I think, doing a little bit of preparation in the beginning is fundamental, and then going and getting skin in the game, and then seeing how that preparation applies is, yes, it's fundamental to anything you do in life.
Yep. All right. Last part, word association. You know the drill. So,
Alrighty.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Genius.
Government.
Fuck up.
Hash rate.
Growing.
The individual.
Sovereign and paramount.
Security.
Very important.
Ego.
Underappreciated.
Greed.
Survival mechanism. Very important.
Stacking sats.
The game.
Fiat currency.
Shitcoin.
Guns.
Personal sovereignty.
Altcoins.
Shitcoins.
Pizza.
Lots of carbs.
Trump.
Balls.
Future.
Bright.
Libra.
Antithesis.
Gold.
Shit.
Bitcoin.
The future. Yeah.
And actually, Alex, this just popped into my mind. This is the real final question, and you know, pass is acceptable answer. On these rapid fire, either the word association or the first section, what's a question that you would like to see added to either of those lists?
Oh man, dude, they're so fucking good. Maybe like what movie reminds you most of Bitcoin or something like that?
What movie? Or okay,
Yeah, because I
I'll give
think
it a whirl on
yeah,
the
yeah,
next
maybe
victim.
like a movie or a song because those art forms are like two of the most powerful, right? And I mean, I might throw mine in here is like it's got to be either Fight Club, Matrix, or fucking or V for Vendetta from a movie standpoint,
Yeah.
and then from a song standpoint, it's got to be Wake Up or Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think the songs will have maybe more variety, but it's hard to deny the three movies you mentioned. For I think a lot of Bitcoiners are probably would say the
yeah,
same.
so say the same thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
Alex, I know we could, excuse me, probably go for 4 or 5 hours, but you got a barbecue to attend to, so we'll save that for some time when we're face to face, and we'll just plug in and go down every fucking rabbit hole we can think of, because I think we'll probably have a lot of stuff to say about many of them. But until that time, do you want to throw out some destinations for people that want to learn more about you, Amber, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, man, for sure. So I'm on Twitter. I'm one of the toxic plebs on Twitter. So at Aleks Svetski, so AlexSvetski. Or if you just type in my name in Google, you'll find me on like Hacker Noon on Medium. Fuck, I'm on LinkedIn as well, believe it or not.
I think everybody
It's
is
like,
just kind of
yeah.
by default there.
It's one of those cringy fucking places, right?
Yeah.
So I'm on there, and then Amber is the Amber app, so THE Amber app, and that's on Twitter and all that sort of stuff. We're only available in Australia at the moment, but hopefully Europe before the end of this year, or
Really?
sometime around that. Yeah,
Wow,
so
that's
fingers
exciting.
crossed, man.
Cool.
Yeah, man. It's exciting times. So that's that, and then also what I might throw in is a little plug. So I am starting my own little channel. It's not going to be really podcasty. It's going to be more ranty from me. It's going to be called the Wake Up Podcast. So I'm still giving it the name podcast, but it's going to be me more fucking ranting about shit.
Yeah.
First episode I'll drop I think next week, which might be the same sort of time as you're dropping this, and it's going to be basically I'm going to dissect the Dan Tapiero Raul Paul Real Vision episode where I'm going to just hit on a couple of the things that they were talking about and try and correct, not from a place of arrogance, but from a place of caring,
Yep.
and sort of try and hopefully have it as a resource that other people can point to if they kind of find themselves confused about some of the Bitcoin concepts. And then I'm going to try and do at least 2 or 3 a month where I go on some mad rants, talk about Bitcoin economics, the sovereign individual, and all that sort of stuff.
Dude, I fucking love that. I mean, I feel like there's so much potential with the mediums that are available, video, audio, whatever. And, we kind of default into the interview format. And I've been doing that for a long time and I like it, but I'm also starting to play with other applications of that media because like you said, you could just fucking rant about something. You can dissect a video. You could read an article. I
Yep.
feel like there's so much more creativity to be brought to the space. So I fully support that endeavor. In any case, I know you got lots on your plate, man. So thank you again for taking the time to speak with me, and wish you all the best with Amber and future endeavors. And I'm sure we'll talk again in the future.
All right, bro. Thank you so much for having me on, man. I really, really, really enjoyed this one.
All right, brother. Take care of yourself.
Take care. Peace, man.